Muy buenos días.
Good morning.
Casi la mayoría me conoce por estar en el aeropuerto.
Many of you know me because of the airport.
Algunos me decían, estás conduciendo, tomando fotos, ¿qué más vas a hacer?
Many said to me, you're driving us around, you're taking pictures, what else are you going to do?
Me falta enseñar, que es una de las cosas que más me gusta.
What was left was to teach, which is one of the things that I love the most.
Cuando me hablaron de la oportunidad de compartir a los pastores,
When they spoke to me about an opportunity to speak to other pastors,
dije, es una bendición de Dios para mi vida,
I said, this is a blessing of God, from God for my life.
porque estoy entre hombres y mujeres que hacen la labor que yo también hago.
Because I'm among people that also carry the labor that I do.
Y cuantas veces vamos a un encuentro de estos, estamos esperando oír la voz de Dios.
And many times when we come to an encounter like this, we're waiting to hear the voice of God.
Cada uno trae diferentes circunstancias que ha vivido y está consultando a Dios.
And each one is bringing their own circumstances and is asking things of God.
Yo conocí a Jesucristo cuando tenía 5 años de edad.
I met Jesus when I was 5 years old.
Y cuando tenía 9, el Señor me dijo que debía ser misionera a Rusia.
And when I was 9, God told me that I was to be a missionary to Russia.
Pero yo estaba en un pueblo muy pequeño en Colombia, en Sudamérica.
But I was in a small town in Colombia in South America.
En esa época, no estoy tan vieja, pero en esa época no había internet, sino libros.
I'm not that old, but at that time there wasn't the internet, it was just books.
Fui a mirar el mapa y yo veía Colombia, Rusia y lo veía tan lejos.
And I looked at a map and I saw Colombia, Russia, super far away.
Y pensaba, la única manera por el estudio de otros misioneros, me imaginaba que era ir en barco.
And because of the stories of other missionaries, I imagined what it might be like to go on a boat.
Y me hacía la idea de que me iba a demorar como 8 meses yendo hasta Rusia.
And I had the idea that it was gonna take about 8 months to get over to Russia.
Y le oraba a Dios y le decía, por favor, que no sea como Moisés, que salió cuando tenía 40 años.
And I was praying to the Lord and saying, Lord, I don't want to be like Moses that started when he was 40.
Crecí, estudié teología con énfasis en misiones.
I grew up, I studied theology with an emphasis in missions.
Viajé por muchas partes de Colombia haciendo misiones.
And I did travel around Colombia doing missions.
También fui a otros lugares fuera del país.
And I also went to other places outside of my own country.
Pero siempre pensaba, ¿y cuándo voy a ir a Rusia?
But I was always thinking, but when am I going to go to Russia?
Preguntaba a otras personas, misioneros, pastores, ayúdenme, ¿cómo hago para ir a Rusia? ¿Qué debo hacer?
I talked to other pastors, to other missionaries, saying, help me, what should I do to get there?
Y me decían, orar.
And they always said to me, pray.
Vale, voy a orar.
Okay, I'll pray.
Pero ¿qué más hay que hacer?
But what else?
Soy administrativa y pensaba, debe haber unos pasos a seguir.
I'm really administrative and I wanted steps to follow.
Pero nadie me decía cuáles eran los pasos a seguir.
But nobody would tell me about the steps that I needed to follow.
Un día dije al Señor, pero si no me dicen qué voy a hacer, ¿cómo voy a llegar a Rusia?
And I said to the Lord one day, if you don't tell me how will I ever get to Russia?
Y llegó a la universidad un misionero que estaba precisamente en Rusia, un misionero colombiano.
And a missionary came, a Colombian missionary came that was specifically called to Russia.
Mi profesor de misiones sabía mi anhelo de ir a Rusia y hizo una cita solo para mí con él. Solo una cita para mí con él.
Okay, and so my director of missions at that time I was studying made an appointment for me alone with him.
Yo le conté mi historia y que quería ir a Rusia.
And I told him my story, that I wanted to go to Russia.
Y me dice, es tan difícil vivir en Rusia.
And he said to me, it is so difficult to live in Russia.
Y yo dije, este hombre me va a decir que no.
And I thought, this guy is going to tell me no.
Sin embargo, sacó un sobre.
And he pulled out an envelope.
Tenía unas fotos del trigo.
And it had some pictures of wheat.
Y me dijo, esta será tu primera ofrenda para que vayas a Rusia.
And he said, this is going to be your first offering so that you're able to go to Russia.
Y yo dije, ay, entonces sí voy a ir a Rusia.
And then I said, okay, then I'm going.
Pensaba que no me iba a casar porque yo iba a ir a Rusia soltera.
And I thought that I wasn't going to get married because I was going to go alone to Russia.
Pero apareció un hombre en mi camino que dijo, yo quiero ir contigo a Rusia.
But a man appeared in my path and said, I want to go with you to Russia.
Tuvimos 2 hijos.
And we had 2 kids.
Uno de ellos es el que está tocando batería.
One of them is who has been playing the drums here, Felipe.
Y yo seguía diciendo a Dios, Dios, ¿cuándo es Rusia?
And I still was asking the Lord, but Lord, when will I go to Russia?
No pasaba nada.
And nothing happened.
Dirigí el programa de extensión de mi universidad.
I started working with the extension program at my university.
Luego salí al pastorado con mi esposo.
And then I became a pastor along with my husband.
Y tenía 39 años.
And I was 39 years old.
Y cuando cumplí los 40,
And when I was 40,
casi me muero de la tristeza.
I almost died because I was so sad.
Y le decía a Dios,
And I said to the Lord,
yo te dije que antes de los 40.
I said to you, Lord, before 40.
Ahora estoy vieja para ir a Rusia.
Now I'm old to go to Russia.
Y dije a Dios, ¿sabes qué?
And I said to the Lord, you know what?
Entonces no voy a insistir más.
Okay, I'm not going to push anymore.
Me quedaré en Colombia,
I'll stay here in Colombia.
compraré una casa,
I'll buy a house.
echaré raíces
I'll put down roots.
y seré como cualquier mujer en Colombia.
And I'll be like any other lady in Colombia.
Y lo dije sola, oré con Dios sola y dije eso.
And I was alone when I said this to the Lord,
Pero
before the Lord.
sentía que por dentro mi corazón se estaba rompiendo.
But inside, I felt like my heart was breaking.
A la semana,
A week later,
mi padre me dice, tengo una palabra de Dios para ti.
my dad said, I have a word from the Lord for you.
Dios no ha olvidado tu sueño,
That God has not forgotten your dream.
porque no es el tuyo, es el mío.
Because it's not your dream, it's mine.
Y este año Dios abrirá puertas para que salgan del país.
And this year, God will open doors so that you're able to leave the country.
Dentro de mí yo decía,
And inside, I said this.
dentro de mí yo decía, ya no creo, ya no se puede, estoy
Inside, I
vieja.
was saying, I don't believe it anymore. I'm old.
Y entonces mi padre me dice, yo decía eso en mi mente.
And my father said to me, and I was saying this in my mind.
Y mi padre dice, y Dios te dice que como no crees,
And my dad said, if you don't believe,
en una semana te llamarán del extranjero para salir del país.
you may not believe, but in 1 week, they're going to call you to leave your own country.
Dejé mi cerebro quieto y dije, no pienso más porque Dios me está oyendo.
And then I said, I'm not going to think anymore because God is listening to my thoughts.
Cuando me dicen de enseñar en esta oportunidad,
When I had this opportunity to speak,
pregunté cuál era el lema para esta conferencia.
I asked what the theme of this conference was.
Y escuché este lema y dije, Dios, ¿tú qué quieres decir a tu pueblo?
And I heard this theme, looking back to move ahead, and I asked God, what do you want to say to your people?
Probablemente tú estás aquí esta mañana
And it's very probable that you're here this morning
preguntando al Señor,
asking the Lord,
tengo muchos años,
I am quite old.
estoy viejo.
Yeah, I'm old.
¿Y qué es lo que quieres para mí?
And what is it, God, that you want for me?
¿Cómo quieres que termine el ministerio?
How do you want me to finish the ministry?
Hay otros que estamos como en la mitad del camino
Others of us are like in the middle of the road,
y estamos diciendo, Dios, ¿cómo llegar a ser como estos héroes de fe?
and thinking, Lord, what do I need to do to become like these other heroes of the faith?
Y hay otros que están muy jóvenes
And others are very young,
y que están esperando cómo Dios hará grandes obras con ellos.
and they're waiting and wondering how God will do great things with them.
Por eso el Señor me decía, habla de Lucas capítulo 24.
And for this reason, God spoke to me about Luke 24.
Y precisamente el título es este, mirar atrás para caminar hacia
And this
adelante.
is the title, Looking Back to Move Ahead.
Lucas 24 tenemos la historia precisamente de dos hombres que creo que son como tú y como yo en este día.
In Luke 24, we have the story of two men who are probably a lot like us.
Dos hombres que llegaron en un momento de su vida y dijeron, ¿y ahora qué vamos a hacer?
Two men that came to a point in their lives where they were saying, and now what?
Voy a pedirle, por favor, ¿lo lees? Versículo
From 13, Luke 24, 13 to
13, versículo 13 al 35.
13 to 35, this is what it says. And behold, two of them were going that very day to a village named Emmaus, which was about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking with each other about all these things which had taken place. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself approached and began traveling with them. But their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are these words that you are exchanging with one another as you are walking?" And they stood still, looking sad. One of them, named Cleopas, answered and said to him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem and unaware of the things which have happened here in these days?" And he said to them, "What things?" And they said to him, "The things about Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word in the sight of God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to the sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. Indeed, besides all this, it is the 3rd day since these things happened. But also some women among us amazed us when they were at the tomb early in the morning and did not find his body. They came saying that they had also seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just exactly as the women had also said, but him they did not see. And he said to them, O foolish men and slow of heart to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary for the Christ to suffer these things and to enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and with all the prophets, he explained to them the things concerning himself and all the scriptures. And they approached the village where they were going, and he acted as though he were going farther. But they urged him, saying, "Stay with us, for it is getting towards evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he reclined at the table with them, he took the bread and blessed it, and breaking it, he began giving it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to one another, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was speaking to us on the road, while he was explaining the scriptures to us?" And they got up that very hour and returned to Jerusalem, and found gathered together the 11 and those who were with them, saying, "The Lord has really risen and has appeared to Simon." They began to relate their experiences on the road and how he was recognized by them in the breaking of the bread.
Es un texto muy conocido por todos nosotros.
This is a text that's very known by all of us, very familiar.
Han acontecido unas cosas muy, muy grandes para ellos.
Some things that were amazingly great had happened among them.
Anduvieron con Jesús,
They had walked with Jesus,
lo vieron como un gran dirigente,
and they saw him as a great leader, director.
pero ahora está muerto.
But he's dead.
Han pasado 3 días y no ha pasado nada.
3 days have gone by and nothing has happened.
¿Y cuál es la decisión de ellos?
And what is their decision in this moment?
Ya no me quedo más aquí.
I'm not going to stay here.
Voy a comenzar en otro lugar.
I'm going to start in another place.
Ellos antes de salir ese día
Before they left on this day,
han escuchado a las mujeres que han dicho que fueron a la tumba y no había nadie.
they had heard from the women that had gone to the tomb and found no one.
Han escuchado la historia de Pedro que dice que fue y miró y no había nadie.
And they heard the testimony of Peter that had said he had gone to the tomb and saw no one.
Pero aún así ellos están tan tristes,
But because of their sadness, they were so sad,
sin esperanza,
without hope,
y deciden huir de ahí.
they decided to leave,
Van
to
a
flee.
Emaús.
We are going to Emmaus.
Emaús significa primavera.
Emmaus means spring.
Es como si ellos quisieran comenzar en un lugar de nuevo.
It was as if they wanted to go to another place to start again.
La primavera cuando nace todo otra vez.
Spring is when everything begins to be born again,
Y
to
ellos
grow
dicen,
again.
voy allí.
And so they were saying, that's where I'm headed.
Y en el camino ellos van muy lento.
And on the way, they were traveling really slowly.
Son 11 kilómetros de viaje,
It's 11 kilometers,
pero casi se les va todo el día caminando.
but they were walking pretty much the whole day.
En el camino se les aparece Jesús.
And Jesus appears on the road.
Y Jesús detecta en primer lugar cuál es el problema de estos dos hombres.
And Jesus in this moment detected, he understood what the problem was with these two men.
El problema de estos dos hombres es que la tristeza no les deja meditar bien.
Their problem was that their sadness wasn't letting them think and meditate clearly.
Jesús les confronta y les dice, ¿por qué están tristes?
And Jesus confronts them. He said, why are you sad?
Aquí este término en el original griego significa casi como una depresión.
In the Greek, in the original, this word actually means almost like depression.
Por
Why are
lo
you
tanto,
sad?
su actitud también era muy lenta.
So also their attitude was very slow.
Ellos van caminando
They're walking
muy lento mientras
very
van
slowly.
discutiendo.
Very slowly as they're talking together about these things.
Ahora, el uno al otro no se ayudan.
And they're not helping each other.
Antes, por el contrario, están tan defraudados que siguen juntos para otro lado.
Instead, together, they're so disillusioned that they continue on that road together.
A veces el hecho de ser pastores no significa que es buena compañía.
Sometimes being a pastor doesn't necessarily mean that you're good company.
¿Y cuál es la solución? En segundo lugar,
But what is the solution to this? This is the second point.
Jesús entonces les dice que es necesario que todo lo que ha pasado haya sido así. Que todo lo que pasó era necesario que pasara.
Jesus said to them, everything that has happened was necessary. It was necessary that this happened.
Y ellos están pensando, ¿cómo es posible que tenga que pasar todo esto?
And they were thinking, but how is it possible that all of this had to
Y
happen?
que yo tenga que huir de este lugar.
And that I had to flee from this place.
Y Jesús les dice,
And Jesus says to them,
eres tonto, como dicen en España, tonto, tonto, tonto.
you are tonto, which is silly, a little foolish.
Eres
Tonto,
lento
tonto.
de pensamiento.
You are slow of thinking.
¿Cómo no pueden creer?
How can you not believe?
¿Por qué les hace esa pregunta?
Why does he ask them this question?
Jesús había dicho que iba a resucitar.
Jesus had said that he was going to rise again.
Ellos escucharon a las mujeres en la mañana.
They heard from the women that morning,
Ellos escucharon a Pedro en la mañana.
and they heard from Peter that morning,
Pero no pudieron entender.
but they could not understand.
Muchos de nosotros como pastores
Many of us as pastors,
sabemos mucha Biblia.
we know a lot about the Bible.
Podemos hacer un concurso aquí esta mañana.
We could do a course right here.
¿Qué dice Mateo 1:1?
What does Matthew 1:1 say?
Todos van a decir, yo lo sé, yo lo sé.
They're going to say, we're all going to say, I know.
Pero nuestro problema
But our problem
es que con el paso de los años,
is that as time passes,
la palabra de Dios está solo aquí
the word of God is just here,
y no ha pasado al corazón.
and it hasn't passed to the heart.
Eso es como cuando uno dice a los hijos, arregla tu habitación.
This is like when you tell your kids, go clean your room.
Y los hijos dicen, lo sé, yo
And the
sé.
kids go, I know.
Pero nunca lo hacen,
But they don't do it
porque lo saben aquí,
because they know it here,
pero no lo han sentido en el
but
corazón.
they haven't felt it here.
Y esto está pasando con estos
And that's
hombres.
what's happening here with
Y
these
yo no
men.
sé si está pasando contigo hoy.
And I don't know what's going on with you today.
A veces tengo problemas con mi vida
Sometimes I have problems with my life, in my life.
y voy y le cuento a mi esposo. Le digo a mi esposo,
And I tell my husband about it.
me está pasando este problema, este otro.
I tell him, this is happening, there's this problem.
Y él me dice, la Biblia dice,
And he'll say to me, the Word of God says,
Le digo yo no quiero Biblia.
and I'll say, no, I don't want to hear about the
Yo
Bible.
quiero mi esposo,
I want my husband,
mi amigo.
my friend,
Aconsejame.
and his advice.
Porque sabemos.
Because we know.
Sabemos. Confía
know.
en Dios, confía. No, sí, confío. Pero
We
cuando,
know, like, trust in God. I know.
cuando viene el problema,
But when the problem comes,
nos cuesta confiar.
it's difficult for us to trust.
¿Y qué hace Jesús?
And what does Jesus do?
Les habla de sí mismo,
He talks to them about himself
desde el pasado.
from the past.
Me gusta lo que el anterior pastor dijo.
I enjoyed what Hank said,
No debemos ir al pasado
that we shouldn't go to the past
para vivir de la nostalgia.
to live in nostalgia.
Los viejos dicen, todo tiempo pasado fue mejor.
All of the older people say, oh, the olden days were better.
Y los jóvenes dicen, yo no quiero oír historias de viejos.
And the young people say, I don't want those old people's stories.
Sin embargo, en este texto Jesús nos muestra
But in this text, Jesus shows us
que sí debemos ir al pasado,
that we should go back,
pero para ver a Dios,
but to see God,
para ver a Jesús actuando,
to see Jesus acting,
para ver que tanto Moisés como los profetas hablaron de lo que iba a pasar
to see that what Moses and the prophets declared
y que se había
was going to
cumplido.
happen and that it had been completed.
Jesús estaba vivo con ellos.
Jesus was alive with them.
¿Cuál fue el efecto en tercer lugar?
And what was the effect? The third point, what was the effect of this?
Ellos entonces vieron cuando partió el pan
They saw, when he broke the bread, they saw.
y por fin pueden entender.
And finally they were able to understand.
Cuando vayamos a la Nueva Jerusalén,
When we go to the New Jerusalem,
yo quiero ver a Jesús partiendo el pan.
I want to see Jesus breaking bread.
Él debe tener alguna manera particular de partir el pan,
I think he probably has a special way of breaking bread.
que ellos lo vieron y dijeron, eso lo hace solo Jesús.
Like that you would see it done and you would say, oh, only Jesus breaks bread
Ay.
like that.
¡Oh, es Jesús!
It's Jesus.
Y dice que Jesús se desaparece.
And it says that Jesus disappeared.
Ellos no se quedan solo diciendo, ¡ay, Jesús se fue, desapareció, milagro!
And they didn't just stay there thinking or saying, oh, he disappeared, where'd he go?
Sino que ellos dicen, arde la palabra en nuestro
What
corazón.
they said was that, was our heart not burning
Volvamos.
with the word?
Volvamos.
Let's go back.
Y se demoraron apenas 1 hora en volver a Jerusalén.
And they only took about 1 hour to get back to Jerusalem.
¿Por qué?
Why?
Porque la palabra tiene que volverse vida en nosotros.
Because the word of God has to become life in us.
Yo
Alive.
estoy en España
I'm here in Spain. We're here in Spain.
porque el Señor en su palabra me dijo,
I'm here in Spain because the word of God said, because
no me elegisteis a mí,
did you not choose me?
sino que yo os elegí a vosotros.
I chose you. You
Y os-
didn't choose me, I
Y os
chose
he
you.
puesto para que vayáis
And I have given you to go,
y llevéis mucho fruto
and you will bear much
y el
fruit,
fruto permanezca.
and your fruit will remain.
Y cuando han venido tiempos de crisis aquí en España,
So when times of crisis have come to Spain,
yo le digo, tiene que seguir ardiendo esta palabra en mi corazón.
I say, even in these times, the word of God has to continue
Y
to burn
no
in my
me voy
heart.
de España
And I'm not leaving Spain
porque Dios no me lo ha dicho.
because God hasn't spoken that to
Y
me.
las circunstancias no me van a mover.
And the circumstances will not move me.
Esto es lo que me sostiene.
This, the word of God, is what
Fui a
sustains
Rusia.
me. I've been to Russia
Con 42.
when I was 42.
Y los rusos dijeron, eres muy vieja para estar aquí.
And many of the Russians said, you're pretty old to be here.
Yo dije, me gusta más España.
And I said, I like Spain better.
En España la gente nos ve y dice, eres una
When
jovencita.
people see us in Spain, they're like, you're so young. young.
No pude vivir en Rusia
I wasn't able to live in Russia.
y hace como 3 semanas entendí por qué.
And about 3 weeks ago, I understood the why.
Nosotros nos íbamos a nacionalizar en Rusia.
We were going to look for nationality, become citizens in Russia.
Por lo tanto, mi marido y mis 2 hijos varones estarían en la guerra en Ucrania.
So if we had done that, gone that route, my husband and my 2 sons would have to serve in the military.
Y Dios no quiso que fuese así.
And God didn't want it to go that way.
Solo ahora lo he podido entender.
And just now, I've been able to understand that.
Pero Dios me dijo, te dejo en España.
But God said, I will have you here in Spain, leave
No
you here in
vas a
Spain.
alcanzar solo Rusia,
You're not going to only reach Russia,
alcanzarás las naciones.
but also the nations.
Y yo le dije, Señor, quiero hacerlo.
And I said, Lord, I want to do that.
Recibiéndoles en el aeropuerto,
Things like receiving you at the airport.
les observé, me gusta observar.
I like to observe.
Y llegaban todos
And everyone arrived like this.
y apenas veían el letrero,
And as soon as they saw the sign, this
hacían una
is what happened.
cara de emoción,
A happy face.
como si nos conociésemos de toda la vida.
It was like we had known each other all our lives.
Y yo recordaba lo que Dios me había dicho.
And I remembered what God had said
Vas
to
a
me.
ir a las naciones
You are going to go to the
y vas a
nations.
conocer mucha gente de muchas partes del
You are going to
mundo.
meet many people from many parts of the
La
world.
palabra de Dios arde en mi
The
corazón.
word of God burns in my heart.
Y yo quiero que tú y yo
And I want you and myself,
salgamos de esta
I
conferencia
want us to leave this conference
con la palabra de Dios ardiendo en nuestro
with the
corazón.
word of God burning in our hearts.
Así que si Dios te ha hecho alguna promesa y no se ha cumplido,
If God has given you a promise that you haven't yet seen,
o no la has entendido,
or maybe you haven't understood it,
yo te animo a que hoy recuerdes,
I encourage you, remember today,
Dios cumple sus promesas.
God fulfills his
Y
promises.
quiero hacerles un desafío.
And I want to give you a challenge.
¿Cuántos está en esta reunión?
How many are here in this meeting
Dicen, Señor,
saying, Lord,
voy a seguirte
I'm going to follow you.
a pesar de las
It
circunstancias,
doesn't matter what the circumstances are,
porque tu palabra arde en mi corazón.
because your word burns in my heart.
¿Quién quiere hacer ese compromiso? Póngase de
Who
pie.
wants to make this commitment? You
Ponte
can
de
stand
pie.
up with me if you want to make this commitment with the
Para
Lord.
que quiero pedir a Dios que la palabra arda en tu
And I want to
corazón.
pray that, ask the Lord that the word would burn in your heart.
Pase lo que te esté pasando,
And whatever you're going through,
levanta el ánimo,
be encouraged
levanta tus fuerzas,
and be strong,
porque el que lo prometió lo va a cumplir.
because what God has promised, He will fulfill.
Por lo tanto, cantemos juntos.
So we're going to sing together.